evening, everyone. This is a special meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. Tonight is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024 at 6:02 p.m. I am Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the Planning Board. With me tonight is our Vice Chair, Amelia Aboff, our clerk, Jahan Habib, and our members, Michael McNeely, Debbie Howard Easton, and Luke Schuster. We have a meeting tonight on a very discrete number of items on our agenda. Those are the proposed zoning amendments that were addressed and heard at a joint hearing of the Land Use Committee and the Planning Board a number of weeks ago. The purpose of this special meeting is to discuss those agenda items and vote on recommendations to the Land Use Committee on those items. So because they have already been opened and have been heard, the meeting tonight is solely a discussion by and among the members of the Planning Board for the purpose of making recommendations on the proposed amendments. So the Planning Board has received a number of written comments that were submitted prior to the close of public testimony a few days ago, and we have had the chance to review those public comments, as well as obviously having reviewed the meeting that we had with the Planning Board and the Land Use Committee a few weeks ago. So I am more than happy to engage in some discussion and some questions. We have a number of members of staff here, both of OSPCD and other, who can address some questions and engage in discussion as we see fit. So who wants to start? Emily would like to start.
Chair Capuano, thank you. I apologize. I would like to, before the discussion starts, present to you all a slight change in what we think is appropriate in terms of the density bonus. We have heard the concerns that have been expressed by developers, by architects, attorneys, others who are in the process of development projects. We recognize that there are a number of development projects in the pipeline that would be at risk if we simply remove the density bonus at this stage. We have therefore done some research, and we would like to propose to you all and to the Land Use Committee, when it gets to that point, that the density bonus is retained, that you keep the net zero density bonus, but also add the LEED Platinum certifiability requirement. So to receive the density bonus, same square footage, developers would now need to be both net zero ready and LEED Platinum certifiable. This would add a small but legitimate bonus in terms of sustainability requirements that we think is appropriate, especially given the context. We do think that this will be a temporary proposal. We're in the middle of 2 additional research projects regarding sustainability requirements and incentives. And so we hope to be back before you all in about 9 months once those projects have concluded with new proposed incentives related to sustainability opportunities. But until that point, we're recommending the retention of the density bonus, the addition of LEED Platinum certifiability as a way that we can continue to support housing, continue to support sustainability efforts within the city.
Emily, thanks very much for that update. I've got a follow-up question or a clarification question. A lot of the concerns that we heard in the public hearing, as well as some of the concerns that we saw through the written comment and concerns that I share, I believe some of my other colleagues share here, is the nature of the retroactivity of the elimination of the density bonus. with the preservation of the density bonus with this kind of tack on bonus, is that going to be for projects going forward, or is that going to be an additional kind of carrot to projects that are already in the pipeline that would otherwise be impacted by the retroactivity of the zoning amendments if we were to recommend approval and if they were approved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a good question. This would be something that would be moving forward and added, so it would take effect basically when the zoning amendments were advertised. So I believe April 17th was the date of the first advertisement. So if adopted, and only if adopted, that is when this amendment would go into effect, or when projects would have to apply this amendment.
So to clarify that, I mean, geez, I'm looking at Amelia. Sorry, because I know this is rather prevailing. Emily, are you saying that staff is no longer recommending retroactivity in entirety of the density bonus issue, or is this are we looking at things that would only be in effect for applications submitted on or after the April date that you referenced?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so there is no ability to establish zoning that is retroactive. Zoning is established from the date of advertisement if adopted, and that is the same thing that would happen if this change were accepted in place of what was originally proposed.
Okay. I may have some additional questions going forward, but I appreciate the update. I'm going to open up to anybody else that would like to ask some questions or engage in some discussion. Who's got some? Somebody's got to have some. Amelia, the actual Amelia that I was looking at earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple points of clarification, I guess. So including on the chair's comments on timeline. So for projects that had already received zoning approvals prior to April 17th, they would be allowed to proceed with building permits under that previous regime with the density bonus as it applied at the time of their zoning approvals. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So site plan approval does not vest the rights of zoning. If there is a special permit involved, that would vest the rights of the zoning. So to that end, the vast majority of the projects that you have seen, I actually think all of them would have their rights vested because they have a special permit attached to them. We reviewed a list of projects that we believed would be impacted, and the only ones that would be impacted that need site plan approval are those that have not yet submitted full applications. The others are building permit only projects that are by right.
So projects that are currently in development but have not yet come to staff or to the board for site plan approval or for special permits would be subject to this new post-April 17th version, which has the LEED Platinum certifiability requirement, which to the best of my understanding is really only a marginal improvement over the previous standards and only a marginal improvement over, if any, over the stretch code that is the state requirement that's prompting this whole thing. So it should not give cause for a lot of like substantial redesign or delays in the process for folks who are already, perhaps at that step right before submitting materials to you. Is that all correct?
That is exactly correct.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. And could you just educate us a tiny bit on, I think I recall why the LEED Platinum certifiability requirement does not cause the same issue with the state building code preemption as the net zero ready requirement itself did?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is if it were a requirement, if it were not related to a bonus, it would cause the same issue. Because this is a bonus, this is an incentive. It is not required for all projects. It is permitted.
Thank you very much.
Who else would like to raise some discussion? Because I'm still somewhat unclear on one aspect of it, but I'd like other people to raise your comments and concerns as you see fit.
It looks like this is DPR
Luke,
the plan.
yep, I see Luke.
Yep.
I see Luke. Sorry, you're in my bottom corner, my friend. I'm sorry. You're bad
relegated to the bottom corner.
Bad play. I blame Zoom. This was not intentional.
So thanks a lot through you, Mr. Chair, to the planning team. I appreciate this proposal, and it seems like it's designed to address some of the concerns that were raised through public testimony. I was doing my best to track all the different steps in the development process that a project might be in, and I appreciated the prior questions around all the different steps, just to make sure we're being really thoughtful that we aren't unintentionally making something really difficult for a project that's just at the slightly earlier stage. I think the back and forth has reassured me that this approach will likely not lead to any of that. And I guess the other thought I'm having is that obviously the vote we're taking tonight isn't the final say, so that am I right that any projects, and the folks who testified, for instance, a couple weeks ago, they'll have the opportunity to hear about this proposal through the fact that this meeting happened tonight, and there'll be a window of opportunity for them to comment further before the council makes its final decision. I guess I'm stating the obvious, but just triple checking that.
Chair Capuano, through you, I can respond. So the public comment period has closed for these amendments. However, we are in communication with all of these applicants who we know have building permits in the pipeline, who have special permits or site plan approvals in the pipeline, so they're aware. This is something additional, so there might be some concerns, and they are able to communicate they have the ability to reach out to us, to reach out to their city councilors, even if it is not a formal public comment. But we're taking that communication and very seriously, so we can make sure that everyone is aware of what we're proposing, how it's different from what was originally proposed, and how we believe this is a win-win scenario.
Okay, appreciate that. I think I'm good.
Anybody else before I ask a follow-up question, just to clarify my understanding on what staff's new recommendation will impact? None. Emily, you mentioned that there was a stage in the development and permitting process where it might be, I wouldn't consider it retroactive, but it might impact things in a way differently than where certain applicants or future applicants would have perceived their projects prior to this potentially being implemented. I think that was through applicants who have received a master plan. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So master plan special permits are a type of special permit, so they would vest the rights. I think what you're discussing is, let's say, an application development proposal that has submitted a building permit application but hasn't received that yet, or submitted site plan approval with a special permit or some type of special permit application but has not yet received it. Just submitting an application does not vest the rights of zoning. So those developments that are in the pipeline, because you can submit an application with very little information and it not be complete. And so projects that are in the process of getting those building permits and the process of getting the special permits, this would still apply to them. And we have reviewed, we have what we believe is a complete list of projects that have submitted something and are in the process of getting those approvals. And again, we are communicating with them on this proposal.
So, and my concern, and I'll be, I'll be straight. My concern is having somebody file an application, understand that the law is a certain thing, and then the law changing somewhat in the development process and the evaluation of that application. And my concern really is, I don't love having people not know what they are getting themselves potentially into when they file an application. They should know what the law is and be held to the law, that they understand the law to be when the application is filed. So what I'm trying to do, my concern is the implementation of any change that we might recommend that would impact that. So to the extent that there are any applicants who have filed applications, who have not yet gotten permitted, and are still in that pipeline. We heard from a few weeks ago. My concern is that they not be left out in the cold. I understand you're in discussions with folks who might be in that situation. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will be subject to new ordinances by the time it actually comes time for their permits to be granted. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're on the same wavelength when it comes to people who have submitted applications, expected a certain thing when they submitted the application, and might be subject to a different situation now. That's my only concern. The rest of it is totally fine by me. My only worry is that people are going to be held to a potentially different standard than they were expecting at the time of the submission of an application. Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just building on your point, do we have the optionality to push the effective date of this out? Or it's not completely clear to me. I understand that the ordinance as it is not in compliance with, has a preemption issue as with respect to the state energy code. However, I think we've had that preemption issue for 6 months, so I'm not sure if like a 7th month matters. So that's a question for lawyers and staff.
I'm curious as to where the legal position of the city would be, were we to deny somebody who had filed an application who was held to a different standard, and what our posture would be, and how successful that might be. But that's one lawyer who doesn't represent the city. I think we're all on the generally the same page. I mean, this is a recommendation to the land use committee. This is not the promulgation of a new ordinance. Yeah, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank you first off, Emily, for that update. Is it possible for us to see, like, on the screen what the language would look like that you're suggesting? And just if I'm going to vote for or against a recommendation, I would want to make sure I know what the words look like.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I do have that. The question is, do I have it? Let me see.
Okay, maybe while you're pulling it up, I'll go on my soapbox a little bit. I had one other little thought to add in. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, you guys both hit the nail on the head. I very much am concerned about changing the rules of the game on a developer, especially people who are trying to help us build our housing stock. So I really want to protect them in any way we can. In fact, I would go so far as to maybe propose to my colleagues if we'd be open to suggesting going for that 7th month or that 8th month and asking for part of our recommendation or not recommendation to include an effective date in the future, just to make sure we can protect that pipeline a bit further. I don't know, do my colleagues have any other thoughts on that?
Michael, I'll just say as one member, I would be supportive of a recommendation that would color guidance to the land use committee to ensure that the folks currently in the pipeline are protected. This is again just a recommendation on an existing amendment proposal. So our recommendations are what they are, but to the extent that we can, I think at least you and I and Amelia have kind of spoken on this particular issue. I'm more than happy to support some language in our recommendation to guide land use committee on where our thinking is. Yeah, Debbie.
Which corner am I in?
Top left.
Okay. No, I would support that, a recommendation with some guidance on the date of when it becomes effective, because prior to this meeting started, that was my main concern around developers that have started the process, have been engaged in the city for some period of time, and now there's sort of different rules that they need to play by that were unexpected. So yeah, I would support that as well.
Jahan, I see you. Dead center, my friend.
Well, glad to be dead center, Mr. Chair. So first of all, thank you for all of the comments from my fellow colleagues here. I'm also supportive of ensuring that developers who are in the pipeline should benefit from this consideration. However, I do have I guess more of a timing question, simply because this is a special session of the planning board, and this is a question really for Emily, and a point of clarification from my end. So I understand that the land use committee will be hearing about this. This will be presented to the land use committee sometime in the future. So if we were to make a recommendation, and let's just say if we go with my fellow members, Michael McNeely's recommendation, which I do support, would that, what would the sequencing events be, for the land use committee meeting? And what I mean by that really is, when you and your colleagues are presenting, Emily, you will be presenting to them this update, plus stating that the planning board had a special session and we made this recommendation. So I just want to make sure that at least I understand how this is all going to work out, at least when it goes in front of the land use committee. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the timing and the process, once the planning board provides a recommendation to the land use committee, the city council will then take up the item. They will review it. They may make changes to the proposed amendments on the floor. And this is where we would provide our recommendations that the changes be made to retain the density bonus and add the LEED Platinum. So they would consider the planning board's recommendation, they would consider the research that staff have done, and then they would make their determination. They could make additional changes on the floor. They could make a date, they could establish a date that these amendments are effective by. So they could say, instead of the date that they were advertised, these amendments will be effective on August 1st, 2024. They could say earlier, they could say later. And that could be part of the planning board's recommendation. We have not recommended an effective by date, primarily because we believe that any reasonable effective by date that would facilitate this additional bonus would only impact one, maybe two projects that are in the pipeline right now. The other projects that are in the pipeline are still a few months away. We believe from getting those building permits, getting any special permits based on what they have submitted, additional information that has been requested, what is missing in their applications. If that answers your questions, I do have ready the draft language that we're recommending, so I can share my screen.
Sure, thank you, Emily. That does answer my question, and thank you, Mr. Chair, as well.
Yeah, Emily, please, I'm curious to see what it is that we're looking at.
All right. So let me see. Are you seeing the Word document, City of Somerville zoning ordinance, starting with section 2.4.5?
Yes.
All right, so what you're seeing in red is what was proposed initially. What you are seeing in purple is additional or changed language that we're suggesting as part of this set of revised recommendations. So instead of saying net zero ready buildings, we would say LEED Platinum certifiable, or net zero ready and LEED Platinum certifiable buildings. Then we move down. I apologize for the changing screen. Into, let's say, this is the purpose statement for residential buildings. So again, instead of we would be changing this part E to permit increased residential density for both net zero ready and LEED Platinum certifiable buildings. And what you would see that would actually have the biggest impact is the use and occupancy requirements, including the minimum density factor, where instead of removing net zero ready buildings, instead of removing this entire row, we would be adding net zero ready and LEED Platinum certifiable. And this is consistent throughout the ordinance. There are multiple sections that are the same or very similar. They might have different density factors. So you might see a different number of square footage in the high-rise district, for example. I believe the density factor is even smaller. I believe it's 650 square feet. Because it is the high-rise factor, it's a naturally more dense zoning district, but we are not proposing any changes to the density factor. We are only proposing the addition of LEED Platinum certifiable and the retention of net zero ready.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on the precise language being proposed by staff? And admittedly, I can't see all of you because you're now very, very small and the shade screen is very, very big.
I have some additional questions that are not explicitly about this language.
Okay. If
Mr. Chair,
nobody
through
has any
you,
questions about this language, can we get rid of it so I can see all again? And Amelia, go for it.
I'm gonna put our new sustainability point person to the test, maybe a tiny bit. Okay, so we're in LEED version 4 still right now, but LEED version 5 is coming out. I don't remember which version. I don't remember how we address LEED generally and like what rating system is the effective rating system in the ordinance. And I know that multifamily construction is also a little bit of a more nuanced area for which LEED rating systems apply. So do we need to, or can we discuss whether we need to specify whether this is like core and shell, residential core and shell, or the residential sort of full building version, and under which rating system it is?
Do I need to say through you, Mr. Chair? To speak. So LEED Platinum V4 is the current effective one. The zoning will apply to whatever is the current. We don't need to update it to say V5. When it is effective, that will be what is effective in Somerville under the zoning ordinance. Its use of the building as like corn shell will be determined by the building rather than the zoning ordinance. So the language is universal in the code and will apply, with different factors for different types of buildings. But that platinum rating is still sort of universal.
I'd like to suggest that might be something that, and if not in the ordinance, then in our submission guidance document that I forget the official name of, that we provide some more clarification on. If we're just as a sort of side comment, I understand that the rating system will automatically change when version 5 becomes the effective version. But as far as multifamily, lead for residential multifamily versus multifamily core and shell, I don't know the nuance of sort of how, I don't know how those two break down, and I don't know if that might create any cause for confusion from someone who has been planning a project and is now trying to step it up to, in a short amount of time, meet this new option.
Amelia, can I ask what you and Michael, I think, are the two folks on the board who know more about this than maybe some of the rest of us, based on kind of what your work is. What would you recommend in a recommendation for language to reflect what you're saying? Because I'm to be honest, I don't know what the recommendation would be, but I'd like to know how you would want to say it.
The primary concern that I was raising is that if we're creating a pathway for developers to make a change to a project that's already at least a little bit baked in a sort of short turnaround time to meet this new standard, it would feel to me more fair to confirm that we are doing this under version 4, which is the version of LEED that's been out for several years, as opposed to the brand spanking new version, because meeting platinum for version 5 would be a learning curve for a developer in a way that meeting platinum for version 4 ought not to be. So that was my primary concern about just confirming what rating system will be the effective rating system, because I remember that 5 is going into effect soonish, but don't really remember when that deadline is. As far as the core and shell versus non-core and shell version, I would be happy to work on that in a sentence or two with Josh and Emily offline if it's something that's going into the guidance document and can be a staff recommendation versus it's not something I would imagine incorporating into this language. I don't know the right answer to it. I just think we should be explicit in what the expectation is. It's my understanding as someone who does not specialize in residential that it might be a little bit muddy, which sort of is the right path for a developer to be pursuing. So I just want to make sure that if we're asking residential development to potentially meet the standard, that we're providing clear guidance on exactly the standard that they should be meeting. But I have that's at the absolute outside of my knowledge. So I'll stop there.
You're already beyond my specialized knowledge on any of this stuff, so I appreciate. I always do your insight on these matters. What I think you're saying is someone who's lay in this very specific area is not only are we expecting that folks that might be caught up in this pipeline be held to the standards that they were already expecting, but it's a very specific standard to which they already expected to be held to, which seems to be version 4 of this particular standard, as opposed to the what will be expected to be a newly released standard that no one that I'm aware of right now is expected to be bound by.
That's correct to my understanding, and Josh and Emily can confirm if.
Okay. If we're really only talking about one or two people, one or two applicants rather, I think a language and recommendation that reflects that specific concern maybe something to the effect of shall be held to the standards to which they would be, held as of the date of their application, which I think would maybe encompass your the version 4 of the certification that you're referring to.
I think that it doesn't need to be addressed in language based on what the staff team has described. I think it is just something that even maybe doesn't need to go into the guidance document, but it's just something that staff should try to communicate clearly with applicants as they embark on this process. But I think that the explanation that was given gave me confidence that it was clear enough as is, and that we weren't introducing a brand new thing that they hadn't seen before to this process. Sorry for the confusion.
No. I'm glad we're having this discussion. I always, learn stuff from everybody who's on the board, and it really makes me happy to be here. So I think our general guidance, because again, it is just a recommendation. I think our general guidance along the lines of what we've discussed and what staff will do as we always do before we make the formal and sign off and recommendation is send the language to me and to Amelia to make sure that it accurately reflects the discussion and the recommendation of the planning board. I think we're on a path to make a recommendation for adoption subject to our kind of narrative. Do we all believe that we're in that place? Because I think we are. Okay. So do we technically have a number of amendments, or is it one amendment?
Mr. Chair, through you, it is one set of amendments, which
One set.
includes jurisdictional changes related to sustainability requirements and changes to the density bonus.
That is what I thought. Let me get the actual language. I can make the motion and we can move forward with a vote. Okay. So the chair moves to recommend to the land use committee adoption of the recommendations for the zoning code that has been raised in a joint hearing and has been readdressed with the planning board this evening. The city council, Mayor Ballantyne, requesting ordainment of amendment to Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, Article 5, Article 8, and Article 10 of the zoning ordinances to remove conflicts with the state building code. So the chair moves to recommend, with all of the discussions and recommendations and color that we've put forward this evening, adoption of that particular batch of amendments to the land use committee, seconded by Amelia. And I have a roll call vote be called, please.
Sure. This is Steve Carey in the planning division. Deborah Howard Easton,
Yes.
Luke Schuster,
Yes.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Amelia Aba,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Aye. We have I think a wholesome and well-reasoned recommendation to the land use committee, and we'll see what happens. The next regularly scheduled meeting with the planning board is June 6th. So we will reconvene then on this platform. Thank you, everybody. The chair moves to Michael.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I know we don't
I'm
have
missing
any
something.
other. I know, no. I know we don't have any other business on the agenda, but can I make one last comment?
Oh, of course.
Okay, thank you. So I think because of where this process is going, we find ourselves in a position where we may be able to be proactive about this particular topic, digging into some of the options around how we can develop more sustainable housing and more of it, maybe providing new types of bonuses and things like that. So I'll frame this as a statement or a thought out loud instead of a question, since we can't really have dialogue on it. But I think it would be really interesting to me, either in the course of our normal business or in a subcommittee format, that we start exploring discussions around this, so that maybe when we get to a recommendation 9 months from now, we've had a little more time to put input into that recommendation, as opposed to just kind of reacting to it like we are tonight. So just want to throw that thought out there. I think this is really great stuff we're working on. I think this is really important to the city, especially over the next 5 or 10 plus years. So would love to be a part of it if I could be.
Michael, I completely share your sentiments on this is exactly what we're hoping to achieve with a subcommittee or other means of discussion for proactive engagement. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I saw Josh's hand real quickly. I'd like to recognize Josh as on the staff.
Thank you, Chair. Just to that point, the Office of Sustainability was recently awarded a technical assistance grant from our regional planning agency to do just that, to do a comprehensive review with staff on how to make a more robust density bonus and sort of broader array of sustainability and housing related policy amendments to avoid, being caught up again by the state, or at least have some time before we get caught up with again. So we're working on that currently and look forward to collaborating with you all.
Thanks, Josh, very much. Anybody else before we move along? Seeing none other, I want to wish everybody a good long weekend and a reflective Memorial Day. And the chair moves to adjourn, second by Amelia. I gotta have a roll call vote, please.
Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Deborah Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Amelia Aba.
Aye.
And Michael Capilano.
Aye. Planning board is now adjourned. Everybody, this weekend, please enjoy some burgers and dogs and anything else that might suit your fancy.
Take care.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.